It's a meaning-making machine, and it's an evaluation and judgment machine. Everything that's happening all the time is immediately processed by the brain and the mind in terms of, is this good or is this bad? Is this comfortable or uncomfortable? Do I like it or do I not like it? Do I want it or I don't want it? If it's uncomfortable, I want to get rid of it. If it's comfortable or pleasurable, I want more of that. So your life is a push-pull operation constantly, push-pull operation. And it's crazy making after a while because it's so unstable, right? That at one point you wanted something and you were clear this is what you should do and this is what you wanted. It felt like you wanted it. Your thoughts were consistent with getting it, and then you got it. And then it wasn't long after that that you realized that wasn't it. You start to pay attention, you'll see this is a pattern, right? This is going on all the time. Everything you get that you wanted, now watch, it's very simple to see, really. It's mechanical. Everything that you get you wanted, once you get it, you don't want it anymore because you got it, right? So then the mind begins automatically to look around and say, oh, okay, I have that now, but I don't feel like that. It really made it with me for a little bit of time, depending on what it was, you know what I mean? If you won the lottery and it was, $2 billion, you know, now watch, even if you won the lottery and it was $2 billion, you wanted it, right? And now you have it, right? Now you have it, and now it's like wonderful. Oh, I can have anything I want in the world, right? I promise you, within a week, you will be suffering a degree of suffering you have never experienced. Because within a week, you'll be afraid of losing that $2 billion that you just won, and you'll be afraid people are going to take it away from you, and you won't be able to make up your mind what to get with it because now you can have everything. So it turns into madness all of a sudden. And this is the way it works. This is the way the mind works. You thought, when you were a teenager, when you were a little kid, you thought, oh, when I get as big as my big sister, when I get as big as my big brother, when I become a teenager, then life will really be good, right? Because I can have a girlfriend, you know what I mean? I can start getting interested in sex. I can do what older people do that I can't do. So they look forward to that. And then you become a teenager, you fall in love, you fall out of love. You start getting pimples on your face, you start worrying about not looking as good as the other kids and all that, and you're on the inside or the outside of the social group. It turns out not to be as pretty as it appeared. So then you look forward and you think, oh, well, but when I get older, when I become an adult, when I become emancipated, what a joke. When I become emancipated, then I'll be happy because by then I can get a job, I'll get a good car, I'll get a girlfriend, blah, blah, blah. Well, all of us here are old enough to know how that turns out, right? But don't worry, because at that point you can then look forward to, but you see, when I find the right person, that's what's missing. When I find the right person, I get married, and then I get a house, and so that'll be enough. House, marriage, right person. So that's good for a while. After the honeymoon is over and starts to not be so fun anymore, then it's, well, maybe if we have a family. So when we have kids and we have a family, that'll be like Disney. So you have kids and you have a family, and then it's not long before you realize that didn't get it either. So then you look to see, well, what's next? What do I have to do? Oh, when I get a divorce and get rid of this asshole, and when my kids grow up, so I don't have to put up with that shit anymore, then I'll be happy, right? So let's get the divorce, let's get through the parenting thing, right? And then we're looking forward to finally getting happy, and then we get to that place, and now we're having our mid-age crisis. So you can see the way this goes. No matter what you get, no matter what happens, it's never it, right? That's why you have these spiritual teachers saying, this is it. They're saying this is it because everybody else is saying this isn't it. Or I thought it was it, but then I found out it wasn't it, and there was something else is it, and it keeps changing. So what does this tell us? It tells us that the personality that we're dependent on being, who we think we are, this personality that we think we are, we believe that's stable. We believe I'm stable. I know what I am, I'm personality, and that's stable. Well, yeah, but you're not paying attention. If you were paying attention, then you realize what you believed yesterday, you don't believe today. You know, what you thought you knew yesterday, you find out today that that was wrong. You wake up, yesterday you woke up happy, today you wake up miserable, right? So this personality is completely unstable. It is never stable. The thoughts keep changing, the emotions keep changing. So it is nothing there's nothing there that you can depend on as far as the personality, the thought process, the emotional states. It's all changing all the time. All right, well, if that's changing all the time, what doesn't change? Is there anything that doesn't change? Well, if you pay attention, you'll see that there really isn't anything that doesn't change. Time is always changing. Everything that's happening is always changing. Sometimes it seems stable, but then it goes haywire, right? So nothing can be counted on the world. You can't really depend on anything or anybody in the world. You can't depend on your own thought process. You can't depend on your own emotional state. So now what? What do you do? Well, what most people do is they start taking drugs. I mean, it's true, isn't it? I mean, what most people do, they either get medication from their doctor, right, to tranquilize the system, tranquilize the nervous system, right? Or they get some pot, you know, you don't even have to be illegal anymore to get some pot, or get some mushrooms if you want to do the psychedelic thing, right? But you start to work with distracting yourself from your experience, right? You start distracting yourself from experience. And so you get to the point in life where you just resign and you figure, you know, once you get into your 50s or your 60s and nothing worked so far, and now you have, you know, less time ahead of you than you did behind you, your body's falling apart. So most people just start to resign. They just start to resign, watch more TV, you know, get fat, you know, give up. And that's pretty much it, you know. From there on, it's just waiting until you get the diagnosis, right? So it's funny in a way, you know, because if you listen to some of the really great stand-up comedians, all they're doing is telling the truth, right? The truth that nobody can admit to themselves or say to each other, but when you hear it out loud from somebody that's doing it to make you laugh, it's hilarious, right? It's hilarious. And what they're saying isn't funny, right? But when it's being played back to you as a joke, you can laugh at it, right? But the very same thing that they're saying to you in the context of comedy is not funny in your life when that stuff is happening, right? So what to do? What to do? Well, this is where meditation comes in, because thousands of years ago, somebody came up with the idea that if that's all there is, at least I want to know for sure that that's all there is, right? So I can just, you know, let go and resign and, you know, let life have me, have its way with me, because there's nothing I can do about it. So the Buddha was one of those people, you know, and he decided that he was not going to accept the situation unless he discovered that it really was all there was. Well, he discovered that it wasn't all there was, and the process of that discovery involved meditation, involved him sitting still, paying attention to his breath, watching what was happening in terms of the thoughts and the emotions playing, right? And in this process of watching what was happening, he made a commitment. He said, I've tried everything, nothing's worked. This has been going on for years and years and years. You could read the story if you want. It's called Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. And then he sat down one night under a tree and he said, I'm not getting up. I'll either die here or I will discover whatever it is that whatever else there is that I haven't seen or I don't understand. Well, by the time the sun came up, he had what he called an awakening. And what the awakening was that he had was that during that evening, all the things that the mind could generate to try and get his attention and get him to stop meditating came up. It's called Maya in Buddhism. Lustful thoughts, fearful thoughts, frustrating thoughts, thoughts about the past, thoughts about the future, you know, all of it was playing all night. And he just sat still, unmoved, unmoving and unmoved, just sat still and maintained attention. And then at some point, something happened, and what happened was he discovered that there was an awareness that did not change during this whole time. There was an awareness that did not change. And this awareness, as he became more familiar with it, which had been being ignored because he was paying attention to what was happening out here in the world, or he was paying attention to what was going on in his mind, right? And the awareness was always there, but he was preoccupied. So when he finally sat down and was still and had an absolute commitment, to seeing what was real and what was true, all of a sudden he discovered there's an awareness here, and this awareness doesn't change and doesn't move. And not only that, but this awareness, without this awareness, there's no existence here. Without this awareness, there's no existence here. Well, that must mean that's what I am. That must mean the awareness is me. And if the awareness is me, and this awareness, which doesn't change, is always unaffected by what's going on. It's like a movie screen that's unaffected by the movie playing on the screen. It's always there, it never changes. And not only is it there and never changes, but it's unaffected by what's going on, but when he allowed himself to let go and experience this awareness that was always there, he discovered that that was free. It was free. It was unaffected by circumstances. There was a sense of well-being and happiness that this awareness was. There's a sense of peace that this awareness was. There's a sense of satisfaction that this awareness was. And this awareness is what I actually am. And so one of the famous non-dual teachers, Nisargadatta, wrote a classic book called I Am That. And that's what he was saying. I am that awareness. I am not this body. I am not these thoughts. I am not these feelings. I am that awareness. And when I experience myself as that awareness, and when I live my life as that as my true identity, my life is a different life. I see things from peace. I see things from happiness. I see things with clarity. I'm no longer being pulled into the thought activity anymore. I'm no longer living my life based on how I feel. And this freedom gives me a freedom to be in the world differently. So I start paying attention to the thoughts instead of identify with the thoughts. And when I do that, I realize a lot of the thoughts are crazy. And they're not my thoughts, they're happening. I have to look to see what they are to know what I think, and therefore they're not my thoughts, they're just happening. So you start to pay attention to the thoughts, so you stop believing in them, you stop identifying with them, and you start behaving consistent with what they tell you to do. The same thing is true with emotions. So this gives you a different life, because now you can do what works instead of what you feel like doing. Now you can look, because you're using an awake awareness that can actually see what's happening instead of a distorted thought process. Now you can look and see, if this is not working, what will have it work? And no matter what thoughts come up or feelings come up, you're able to take the action that will provide the result that you're interested in. So now you have power. Now you have a different way to live your life. Now you have a way of being happy, peaceful, satisfied, and relaxed. How? By understanding that your true identity wasn't what you thought it was. Your true identity is this awareness that has always been here. And so now it becomes a matter of practicing, paying attention in such a way where you start to withdraw your interest and involvement with all of the negative, useless, repetitive thinking, and start to withdraw your interest and attention from all of the useless, reactive emotions, and start to be present as what you actually are. Be present in the world as what you actually are. These people end up being called masters. These people end up being called seers. These people end up being called awakened or enlightened beings. And what these people have told the rest of us in many different ways, many different writings, is that this is available to every single human being. This is available to every single human being. And I was listening to a Zen master the other night who was talking about his awakening. And there are a lot of awake people walking around. They don't necessarily advertise it. That's not a good idea in this world to advertise anything. As soon as you stand up, somebody will take a shot at you, right? But they're there. They're there, and they're available to teach. And this one master was talking about this, and he said, and if you get this one thing, if you get this one teaching, it can transform your life. And he said, most of humanity has it wrong. Most of humanity thinks after I showed up here that I should be available to be given everything I want to need. Entitlement, right? Like, I didn't ask to be born, so since I'm here, give me what I want, or I'll take what you have. You know, all the shit that goes on between human beings. So people, once they're born into this conditioning that human beings share with one another, which is primarily ignorant, right? Once they're born into that and they start to play that game, immediately they're unhappy and dissatisfied, right? And they're looking to see what would fulfill me. You know, what will give me what I need? What will get me out of this mess that I'm in called living, called life? And what this teacher said the other night was very, very enlightening, very clear. And if you can get what he was talking about, it can open up a whole new possibility. And what he said is that instead of thinking that after you're born into this world, that it's about getting fulfillment. You know, once you show up in life in a body, now it's about getting fulfillment, right? He said, how about if the truth is being born is the fulfillment? What if that's the fulfillment? You didn't, you know, as Douglas Harding said, you know, it didn't have to happen. Your birth didn't have to happen, right? But most people don't look at it that way. Most people don't look at birth as a gift or a blessing, you know. They look at it as like a curse, you know. Something terrible was done to me to put me in this life, right? Well, how about if the truth of it is that most people have it backwards, that your birth was a fulfillment. It's the fulfillment of the possibility of being alive. It's the fulfillment of the possibility of experiencing conscious awareness. You know, and they say in one of the famous teachings, in the Advaita Vedanta teachings, which are ancient teachings, right? They say that the practice of being aware in the world can be summarized in one statement. And when they say this statement, they mean it to be one thing, not separate things. It's one thing happening all at once, right? And it's Sat Chit Ananda. Do you ever hear that? Sat Chit Ananda? You hear a lot of the teachers mention that statement. It's a statement from the Advaita Vedanta teachings, right? Sat Chit Ananda. Sat means existence, Chit means consciousness, and Ananda means bliss. So I exist, I'm conscious, and I am happy. I exist, I'm conscious, and that's the realization of the fulfillment right there. I exist, I'm conscious, and I'm happy. I exist, I know what I am as consciousness, and I am happy. That consciousness is happy, right? But we have, we've diverged away from that dramatically, and our lives are about a story, our conditioning, right? Our lives are about the orientation of the physical body, which is survival, isn't it? Yeah, the orientation of the physical body, your brain's primary function is to get this body to survive, right? The only problem with that is that the brain's not awake, the brain's not aware. It can't see its own mistakes. It can only take the programming that was put into it and process that programming and then put outputs, right? And the mistake that the brain is making, right, is that while it is true that the body needs to survive in order for you to have a piece on the game board called life, while that is true, that doesn't mean you are the body. That doesn't mean you are the body, okay? And so it's possible for you to wake up from that misunderstanding, and it's also possible for you to wake up and see that the programming in the brain for survival has generalized itself beyond reality, beyond the necessity for survival. What do I mean by that? Well, it is true that the brain has to have the body operate in such a way that it will survive any threat, right? So if somebody comes at you, your brain will jump in and have you behave in a way to stop them from hurting you, right? However, the brain doesn't know the difference between the body and the personality. And so the brain thinks that the survival of the personality is exactly the same as the survival of the physical body. So therefore, if somebody insults you, that feels like they're going to kill you. Now, according to the brain, it behaves the same way. You go into flight, you go into fight or flight, right? If somebody insults you and threatens your identity, not your body, but your personality, right? Most of the killing and most of the murdering and the killing that's going on the planet was not because the body was being threatened by another body. It was because both bodies believed that their identity was being threatened, and that's why they're out to kill anything that threatens that identity. We call it war, right? We call it personal conflict, right? And you can see what it's like. You've all experienced it, right? Because anytime you got into conflict with somebody, right, and you felt invalidated, that's like being killed, right? You felt invalidated by what that person was saying or doing, right? And because of that, you started taking a position to protect yourself in relationship to the other person's behavior or what they were saying, and it got more and more intense, right? Until being right, that's the way the personality survives, doesn't it? To be right in conflict, to be the party that ends up being the winner, being right, right? But if the intensity of the self-righteousness gets too intense, right, somebody will end up dead right. Somebody will end up dead right. Happens all the time. People will kill over a parking space. That's not about survival of the physical body. That's about being right. That's about not being invalidated, okay? So this is a dangerous way to live your life. You know what I mean? You're walking around with a killer in your head. You're walking around with a killing machine in your head that'll kill somebody that is not threatening your physical existence, right? So you want to be able to come out of that. You want to be able to come out of that, and you want to be able to live a life that has peace. You want to be able to live a life that has wisdom. You want to be able to live a life that's conscious and awake. You don't want to fight with the people that you're trying to love. You don't want to be in conflict with the world that you need to be part of in order to succeed in your life. So what do we have right now? We have stress. You look right now, the mental health crisis, worldwide mental health crisis, more depression than ever before, more acting out behavior than ever before, more anxiety than ever before, more addiction than ever before, more ignorance than ever before. So that is a situation in which you have to ask yourself, do I want to be part of that problem? Do I want to be part of this herd that's running off a cliff? Do I want to be part of that? Do I want to keep believing my conditioning and think that I should behave the way other people are behaving that has never worked in my personal life, and it's never worked in the collective life of humanity? Do I want to be part of that? Or do I want to take the opportunity that the Buddha took and start sitting still and being quiet and allowing myself to pay attention in such a way where I can start seeing things as they are, not as I think they are, not as the way I feel about them, but start to see things as they are. And if you start to see things as they are, then you'll start seeing things the way I just was describing them. And once that process begins, they call that waking up. They call that being on the path. And once that process begins, if you start reading the writing of the teachings of the masters, you will hear them sharing what they saw when they started looking at things as they are. And then your life will be about the truth instead of about how you feel and what you think. Your life will be about the truth. Your life will be about committing yourself to what you actually want. What do you actually want? I don't know that most human beings even ever ask themselves that question realistically. They think they know what they want. They think they should want what they were told that they want. But how often do you sit there and actually look and see, what do I really want? I worked with guys in prisons for 32 years, and they were all there because they were trying to get what they wanted. That's how they got in prison. They were trying to get what they wanted. What do you think they wanted? They wanted money. They wanted money. They wanted money, they wanted power, they wanted control, right? And it ended up being in prison. They ended up being in prison. And I'll tell you something, everybody else that's 100% committed to just money, power, and control is also in prison, but they're walking around and carrying the prison around in their head, okay? So when I started to help the guys in prison to wake up, what I said to them was, I said, stop and take a look at what you really want here, right? And when you really look at what you really want, you begin to see it's not the money, it's the experience that's associated with the money, isn't it? What you really want is an experience. It's not a material thing, it's an experience. It's an experience of what? It's the experience that I already described, that is the experience of what it's like to be what you really are. That's what people really want. And they're confused, right? They think to get what they really want means to satisfy their mind, right? To get the money, to get the power, to get the fame, whatever the case may be, right? But even though that's a never-ending rat race and a never-ending process, most people will keep trying for the rest of their lives. And when you start to practice meditation consistently and you start to come out of the sleep, come out of the dream, you start realizing that it's possible to start to live your life in a way where you're putting aside the childish ideas that you used to have. You're putting aside the conditioning that wasn't going to get you anywhere. And you start focusing on the truth. You start practicing staying consistent and aware of the truth and living your life consistent with that truth. And if you do that, guess what? Life starts to work. Life starts to work because life is not set up to fail you. Life works, right? But it only works when you accept the reality of it and stop thinking that you know better than life. It only works when you accept that life is the way it is. Up is there and down is there for a reason. Happiness is there and sadness is there for a reason. Why? Because if you don't have the opposites, right, you don't have a reality. Do you understand? That's the setup. Life already works. Death has to be there for life to work. Up has to be there for down to work. Happiness has to be there for being unhappy to be there. You wouldn't know you were happy if you were never unhappy. You would never know peace if you never experienced conflict. So the whole thing works, right? But as long as you keep superimposing on it, right, your ideas about it, how it should be, right, that's where your suffering comes in. You wake up in the morning, and as soon as something happens that's not consistent with what you want, you get pissed off. You know, that shouldn't be happening. She shouldn't have said that to me. She shouldn't have said that to me. That car in front of me shouldn't be going that slow. I shouldn't be making this amount of money. This person shouldn't be the president. Right? Can you see how you're building a world of suffering? You're creating a world that you have to live in now of all the things you're resisting and rejecting. Right? So if you want to live life in a way that's harmonious, if you want to be in the flow of life, all you have to do is change one thing. Stop thinking it should be different. My dog never had that problem. You know, my dog just, whatever was happening, was happening, you know. He never looked in the mirror and said, oh, bad hair day. Right? So in a sense, animals don't have the same problem we have. We've been given the gift of self-reflection. We've been given the ability to think, right? And we used it to turn the world into hell. Check it out. We've been given the gift of consciousness and the ability to think, and we used it to turn the world into hell. I can't say anything clearer than that tonight, right? So if you see what I'm talking about and you see what I'm pointing to, then please understand that meditation is a practice that can be a practice to put you on a path to get you out of hell, to get you to go sane, right? And it's not an overnight job, you know, because it didn't take overnight for you to get this crazy, right? So it's not an overnight job. You have to practice. You have to keep practicing every single day to come back and touch the truth, touch the touchstone. Every single day, touch the touchstone. Every single day, forgive yourself for your ignorance every single day. And keep coming back with a commitment to the truth, a commitment to reality. And eventually, life starts to be obviously a very interesting, exciting, and adventurous experience that is fulfilling. It is fulfilling. It's not promising fulfillment, it already is fulfilling.